Species.
I was walking in the park today, and I saw a Doberman pinscher, and I nearly shit my pants.
All right, welcome to Origin of Species. My name is Scott, and I am joined by my friend Steve. And I would have probably myself too because I'm scared of dogs like that.
Well,
So
they were Doberman pinschers for people of a certain age. Were the badass dogs, I'd say, of the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
And they were like, they were. That was the dog you were scared of. And
absolutely.
I was scared of. And if you ever rode a bike or went for a walk, you had to deal with Doberman pinschers. And in my mind, they were almost like super human dogs that like fences couldn't contain them. They were some sort of like nightmare machines.
Well, they're like freaky athletic dogs. And yeah, what happened to Doberman pinschers? It's like they were definitely involved in movies of that time as well as being like the scary dog. But I don't feel like I see Doberman pinschers around that much.
And I think Norm Macdonald actually brought this up one time, and I forget how the joke goes, but I don't think he had a good answer out of it because they just stopped. They were for a long time. They were the big brand, and they're just not anymore. So as I've mentioned, I've been riding my bike. I got a bike for the first time in forever. So I've been riding my bike, and so far I haven't had to like freak out in front of the family like when I see any other dogs. But when I saw this Doberman at the park, who was not on a chain, was with his owner, who had it under control. But it honestly brought up some flashbacks of the past. But it'd be interesting to see what happened that ended the reign of the Doberman. Because I'd say right now, like pit bull, if I'd pick a dog I'd be scared of, it'd be a pit bull.
Yep. Yeah, it's weird that you wouldn't think of dog breeds as being something that would change over time as like the scary dog. But yeah, pit bulls. My personal like dog that I am the most scared of is German Shepherd. And that's very specific. And I think I've told the story on the podcast before, so I won't tell it again. But as in a nutshell, as a paper boy on my bike with a humongous load of, Sunday papers, I was chased by a German Shepherd, and there were, dogs, just like, the trope of the postman that, gets chased by the dogs. The same thing for paper boys. So German Shepherds, I never liked. I did forget about Dobermans. I've never known anyone that had a Doberman, but to your point, when we were younger, they were the badasses. Maybe they never existed. Maybe it was all a CIA plot.
Like with birds and
exactly
songs from the Scorpions.
Dobermans aren't real. Yeah, exactly. And I recently learned that the CIA may have written Wind of Change, according to a podcast I just listened to.
Right. And if you die between now or in the release of this episode, we'll know why.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got that secret out there.
Yeah.
But I would have been interested to ask the owner, like, how did you get a Doberman at this point? But I was so terrified and worried about controlling my bodily functions.
A Doberman,
you brought back a lot of stuff.
Well, you also buried the lead about the Doberman wasn't on a leash. Like, I am not a fan of any dog not on a leash. Any dog, even if it's a tiny little dog, just because then that's like chum for bigger dogs. Like it's just.
I'll talk to Mindy the dog about it to see if she's got any connections. Then she can maybe get me updated.
Yeah, I'm sure she does. I'm sure that's where all the Dobermans are. They're in prison.
Maybe that's why. Maybe with like all the 1990s crime reform, it shut down Dobermans. They're all locked up in a doggy jail somewhere.
Yeah, the war on Dobermans, man. It's a real thing.
The CIA's saving them up for when the Scorpions go to war again.
They're recharging the batteries or something. I don't know.
So our idioms for tonight, we always seem to have a theme. In mine, it started, I was going for an all-face theme.
Face.
All face. And it started with when I had left over from several months ago, we did a March Madness episode. That one of them that was left off, a basketball related one, was In Your Face. That started my journey, but we're not going to do that one tonight. But as we found several times, there seems to be certain subgroups that there's just a plethora of idioms. Horses.
Right.
I have a feeling in season 4, we will be doing conclude my horse trilogy.
Yep.
And maybe we'll even split it. We'll go, Peter Jackson style. It'll be part 3, A and B. We'll split it up. Who knows? I mean, there's that many horse idioms, but
yes.
faces are up there with that. So we're going to do, and as I was on my research journey, I learned some things. So normally I give Scott a heads up about what we're going to discuss. But I wanted to surprise you a little bit with some of the ones we're going to go tonight.
Cool.
But one that won't surprise you is the first one we're going to do, which is to cut off one's nose to spite one's face.
I'm glad we're doing this one because I think this is one that maybe means something different than what I think it means. I feel like it's one that sort of like throw the baby out with the bathwater, that maybe gets confused and doesn't mean what people maybe use it wrong, including myself. So I'll be interested to hear, what it actually means just as much as what the origin is.
And one of the things I like about this one, it's one that I use, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But I'm also a big fan of spite. Spite, unfortunately, I don't think it reflects well on me as a person, but spite is a big influence in things that I do. And
I'm sorry that I agreed with that really quickly, but
it's obvious. No one's surprised by that, and my family's not, based on all the board game time that we've had lately. Too of my spitefulness will come out as I try to instruct my daughter. You shouldn't do that to get back at somebody. It's a bad strategy. And then, seeing myself become a spiteful hypocrite moments thereafter with that. But one of my favorite all-time I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask you real quick on the subject of board games. Do you have any board game recommendations? What have you guys been playing?
Settlers of Catan is kept, but that and noise canceling headphones have been the glue that's kept my family together during extended stay-at-home time.
Yeah.
So
that's a fun one.
That game is just a main line of excitement, drama, tension, and spite when I play it. You get to see a lot of that.
Oh yeah, you move the robber around. You can really screw somebody and just keep,
Yeah.
Yeah, my rule is like if you try to ask me not to put it on yours, then it's getting put on yours. Don't beg, you're going to get it most of the time.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what we're talking about, that is a good game, Settlers of Catan.
Yeah.
Highly recommended. So yeah, we've been playing that and playing cards, which has been really fun. So so anyway, but you were did you have a specific spite story you were going to tell?
I think one of the times in my life that I realized that spite didn't reflect very well on me is a time, and I will use this person's name. You and I have a mutual good friend by the name of AJ. At one point in my life, there was a bathroom door that didn't shut all the way.
Oh, yeah.
And he complained about it to the point that I intentionally didn't fix it to to show him. And I remember one time my late father-in-law was visiting at the house and asked me about the door. And I explained to him very truthfully, I understand it doesn't close all the way, but I'm using it because it really annoys my friend AJ.
You're like, I'm not giving that a-hole the satisfaction of me.
Exactly. And I actually probably came pretty close to using those words. And the look of, I don't think bafflement is a word, but if it was a word, it was invented that day with the look he gave me of this very practical, hardworking man looking at his son-in-law and probably having some regrets.
Well, because in your mind, though, it's funny, though. I've had moments like that, too, where things seem totally reasonable to you,
Yeah.
and then as soon as you say it out loud to somebody else, everything locks into place, and you realize how ridiculous the whole thing is. So,
and in
the
my
funny thing is,
defense,
I do. It's something as mundane as that. I specifically remember you talking about about AJ and like he won't shut up about the door, so I'm not. And I thought you were joking, but like, because you're like, so I'm not fixing it. I'm like, I don't. Okay, but that's really funny.
And I almost wish my father and I had a chance to meet AJ, and maybe he'd understand. But maybe it was good that he didn't, because I didn't want to drag him down to the world of spite. So again, with spite, it's something I realize, unfortunately, is an attribute I indulge in. But as I've gotten older and hopefully a little bit wiser, I try to stay away.
Well, it's
think about spite.
I think that there's a fine line between like competitiveness or just sort of like fun, sort of like one-upsmanship or gamesmanship versus like, and maybe that's, I think I see where we're going with this. Would you say in that situation you were cutting off your nose to, it's cutting off your nose to spite your face, or is it despite your face?
No, to
Real
spite.
Question. Okay.
To spite. Okay. And I think that's actually a great transition to that. So going to wordhistories.net and their discussion on the origin of to cut off one's nose to spite one's face. They define the phrase as meaning to carry out a vengeful action that hurts oneself more than another, usually with the implication that the person who carries out this action knows its likely consequences beforehand. So I think that defines it very well, because not only are you doing something that harms you as much as it harms the other person, you're not doing it by accident. You're aware of the consequences that are going into that.
And I think that part of it is the part that I have wondered about. And I think a lot of times if somebody uses this phrase, they are saying that person is doing something to screw themselves over, but missing the second part, which is knowingly doing so.
Yeah. So this is an idiom or an idea that's been around in one version or another for a long time. So sticking with wordhistories.net, the first time it was used in this form, it was documented by Francis Gross in his book, A Classical Dictionary of the Vulgar Tongue. If Francis Gross hasn't come up before, he's been related. He comes up in a lot of articles that I read.
Well, we've said Classical Dictionary of the Vulgar Tongue for sure. I don't know if we've given him credit, but
yeah, and we don't want to be spiteful to him, so hopefully we will try to give him more credit.
Yes.
In the quote listed there is, he cut off his nose to be revenged of his face, said of one who, to be revenged on his neighbor, has materially injured himself. So this quote it gives the whole thing there. It points out, it gives the quote, but also points out that, he got revenge on his neighbor, that at the same time hurt himself just as bad.
Right. Okay. Right. So it's not the act of doing whatever you're doing to your nose is not in itself revenge. It's you get revenge, and in the process, you're going to hurt even maim yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Now, does this one, I'm just remembering something that I may have heard. Cool. Does this one have a dark origin?
I did want to get one of the folk etymologies out of the way. There's a pretty popular one that goes back to Vikings were going to invade an area, and the people there were aware that was going to happen. And before the ladies were defiled, I guess we'll say, that they would wound themselves so they wouldn't be attractive to the people that are coming there. So don't believe that actually happened.
It doesn't like, and that's the one sort of dark origin that I've heard on that. But but when you just described what the phrase actually means, that doesn't really make sense, because you're not getting revenge on anybody. You're kind of doing what you have to do to survive in that scenario. So,
right.
Yeah. So that's not, it has nothing to do with that.
There's no spite involved with that. That is, if risking something to take to protect yourself.
Right.
In another way.
Which, by the way, I unfortunately don't think that's going to stop a Viking from doing whatever they're going to do anyway.
Yeah.
But sadly.
So sticking with wordhistories.net, they give a couple examples of other times that this has been used in similar ways. Back in the day, and I really mean back in the day, around the time 1191 AD, there was a proverb quoted. The English translation is, "He who cuts off his nose takes poor revenge for a shame inflicted on him." And if I could speak in Latin, that would sound really cool, probably. A couple French versions from 1300s. "He who cuts off his nose, his face is mutilated." I don't know if that's really a proverb, it's more of a kind of factual statement.
It's just a fact, right?
"He who cuts off his nose dishonors his face." Okay. And then, again, a little bit more practical application. "He who cuts off his nose makes his face ugly." So we like the French here on our show, but for their proverbs related to cutting a nose off your face,
we must be missing some.
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, maybe when it's said in French.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There must be some subtlety to, like, whenever we look at other versions of things, you're like, what? But this one's pretty. I mean, cut off your nose to spite your face. It still doesn't totally make sense to me, even though I understand what it's supposed to mean. But are you spiting your face, or are you spiting your enemy? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think we need this phrase because it's a good, like, concept. You know what I mean? It's a good of like knowingly screwing yourself to get back at somebody.
Right.
I don't know. I kind of feel like we need a better phrase for it. I don't know what it is just yet, but.
Well, when you speak of people who make better phrases, there's somebody that I think of that we haven't talked about in a long time. John Haywood.
John Haywood. I love that guy.
His dialogue containing proverbs and epigrams from 1562 lists a version of this that you could say is kind of a forerunner in an entry called "Of Spite."
You already liked this guy John Haywood a lot, and now that he has a book called "On Spite," have you ordered that yet?
Of Spite, no.
Of Spite,
no. But if I get a throat tattoo, I have a feeling I've got an inspiration now. So I shall read this verse for you. "If
Please.
there be any, as I hope there be none, that would lose both his eyes to lose his foe one, then I fear there be many, as the word goeth, that would lose one eye to lose their foes both." Both was supposed to rhyme as
right. So the moral of the story is, if somebody is willing to give up an eye to vanquish a foe, they should lose both eyes. Is that kind of what he's saying?
I like that. And I think that makes sense.
Okay.
So let's hit just a couple, by the way. And this is from Phrases UK, as per that last quote from their research. But just a couple. I think the last time we talked about John Haywood, I gave like a pretty just kind of loose interpretation or sample of some of his phrases. And he wasn't bad. He wasn't doing too well. It was a bit of a Rob D.
He had a dog that drowns in pudding or something.
Yeah.
And I was not impressed. I think he had a great one though, but I don't remember what it was now. So you got some more?
I'm going to hit you with a couple John Haywoods, and these are all winners, I would say.
Okay, let's do it.
"Let sleeping dogs lie."
Oh yeah, that's
winner.
A good one. Winner.
I've learned that, unfortunately, especially when your dog's been to prison. "Look before you leap." Very practical.
Yep.
"Know which side your bread is buttered."
Ooh,
John Haywood.
Good. That's okay. You've been holding out with the Haywood.
And little pictures have big ears, which I actually like that one because I have to use it. I try to use that in front of my kid, who now knows when I'm saying that to my wife that we're saying something inappropriate in front of her, to try to tip them off.
Okay, can you explain that one to me?
Yeah.
Little pictures have big ears?
Yeah, that's something we always use in my house. My parents probably tried to do the same thing we translated, of basically kids are listening to everything you're saying, so it's kind of a little kayfabe.
But
remark to say in front of them.
I'm sorry, it's little pictures, like picture frame?
I've always heard it as picture, as in picture frames. Reading this and looking at John Haywood's version of written in Old English, it's pictures, like a pitcher of water. But maybe I've been doing that wrong.
Who knows?
And with the way
I've never heard either of them.
Yeah. Well, good. We've learned some stuff today, and we've learned from John Haywood there.
Yeah, well, good. No, I can't remember if we've done this one, if we've gone over this before. I know he said he did Sleeping Dogs Lie. Did you say he also did Snitches Get Stitches, or was that somebody else?
It might have been him.
I feel like I literally think you may have made that joke on the last one, but if not, I do feel like but those were good, man. Those were all good.
And he might have done that, actually. I could see him being that crafty to have that, and have that street knowledge.
Right. Yeah. So here's the thing. John Haywood, I'd never heard of. Not that not a shock, but most of these people I've heard of that we end up. I mean, it's like Shakespeare, or it's Samuel Pepys /Pepys.
Mm-hmm.
I had never heard of Haywood, but man, he was prolific. I feel like he comes up. I mean, he's got as much good stuff as Sir Walter Scott, man, for sure.
Not Sir Walter Raleigh. You're right.
No, and he's also, who's the other one? Who did Panty-Socracy? Oh, STC.
STC.
We've done a lot of episodes, and I do think that if we ever do like merch, we should really get like playing cards made with these guys on them. And we definitely, if we're going to do that, we're going to get, the king is going to be Barry Popick.
Oh, of course. Barry Popick will be the king with that. You don't have to worry about that. And maybe we'll be hearing from him soon. Not saying anything definitive, but maybe we will be hearing a little bit more from Mr. Popick.
That would be amazing. Shortly. That would be amazing.
I think it was really good that you just made that statement, because as I think I alluded to, we start out with John Haywood. We're going to go a little bit in the opposite direction now, for a phrase or idiom that I think everyone's heard and is just absolutely awful. But as I got into it, I found myself in this just black hole that I could not pull myself out of. And
I'm excited to hear this, because I have no idea what it's going to be.
Don't be too excited, because the idiom is talk to the hand because the face ain't listening.
Oh my gosh. We have never done anything quite like that, I don't think. So let's just get started. This was not Haywood. So this is not a Haywood themed episode.
It is not totally Haywood themed, but I will spoil that John Haywood did not invent, even though that would be great if that was the way.
I never heard this one until, like, I thought Oprah made this up or something, because it feels like it came around that time I started hearing talk to the hand, because the face ain't listening. But I have no idea where that would have come from. I think I know the meaning of it. I don't think we have to spend as much time parsing through what exactly that one means.
We're not going to be the only people drugged down by this idiom, and this is one of the reasons I felt a little bit comfortable doing it. Is our good friends at Phrase Finder are pulled down into this. They actually have this as an entry. So they define the meaning of the phrase, talk to the hand, parentheses, cause the face ain't listening.
Right.
As defined as, and they have this in parentheses also, with outstretched vertical palm. Shut up. I have no interest in hearing what you've got to say.
Yeah, that doesn't roll off the tongue as well as talk to the hand.
It doesn't.
Shut up, because I don't have any interest in what you have to say. Okay.
Yeah. So going through the origins of this, they reference a couple advertisements that use this in the late 90s that they actually thought were the earliest uses that were in writing. So I actually, and I think this is very good, that I found some contradictory information to that. So we will come back to our friends at Phrase Finder here in a little bit for our conclusion. But for right now, we're going to take a journey elsewhere. So as with, if you can imagine, with one as dumb and terrible as this, and you've noticed I didn't ask you how often you use it or if you use it, because it is awful.
I don't want you to, if I said that's a no-win situation, because it's either no or it's yes, and then you would have to like spite me later because you'd be so disgusted by me.
Or I have to put my hand up on our Skype window there
exactly.
to tell you about. So as I researched this, multiple internet resources push this back as coming back as a phrase popularized by actor and comedian Martin Lawrence in his sitcom Martin, or as I remember it being pronounced, Martin.
Martin. Yeah.
Martin, which I believe is the proper way.
Martin. Yeah, if you say the T, you don't say the T in Martin.
Martin. So this is a sitcom that I didn't really like. And Martin Lawrence is just one of those comedians that's just always, I know I'm going to sound as old and Caucasian as I am, but there's urban comedians I like, and he's just not one of them. He's just somebody that I always just kind of found his shtick annoying. So sticking with Martin Lawrence, or Martin, in his show, doing some research, it comes across in various spots that his show's the inspiration. So I spent some time on YouTube and Daily Motion trying to find something from the show actually showing that quote, but couldn't find anything. I eventually got to a point of it wasn't worth it to go much farther into the Martin and Shanae, who I also saw was being listed as potentially.
Shanae. I forgot about Shanae. Well, when you're in the second hour of looking for clips of Talk to the Hand from Martin, and your kid's like, Dad, are we going to play? When can we play Catan? You're like, I got to find it. Sorry. Not, maybe after the third hour I'll come. So at a certain point, you have to give it up. I don't know if the clips just aren't available or if it's like urban legend sometimes with these shows. Yeah. It's like, maybe it came from it, maybe it didn't. So, but you were not able to confirm it.
No, so I can't confirm it, even though a lot of resources point back to that. But I think I have two things for you. I've defined the first time I think it was ever used in print, which predates what Phrase Finder had. And I also have two resources that are non-Martin Lawrence related that maybe it started with his show, but I have two other places I think that helped expand the reach of this awful, terrible idiom. So the first time that it was ever used in writing that I could find was in August 1995 in a magazine called the Indianapolis Monthly. So it shows up in an article called Slangwich. From 1995, according to the Slangwich article in the Indianapolis Monthly, Talk to the Hand is defined as the phrase, which means shut up, is accompanied by a hand in front of the victim's face. Example, did you call me babe? Talk to the hand. So one of the things I love about this also is it has several other hip young slang phrases from 1995 that we can revisit.
Oh, I can't wait. Please bring them on.
So the first one is Dawg. Spelled D-A-W-G.
What up, dog?
Hey, dog. Let's skip class. Next, fat. And I know you can guess how that was spelled.
I knew it. P-H-A-T. I was going to say fat has to be on this list.
And the example is, I got an A. Fat.
I love it.
Yeah. So I'm going to end strong.
First of all, before you move on, nobody that used fat ever got an A. Oh, no, it was the other kid saying fat. So it actually could have been that the person got an A, and the kid that said fat as a response was pulling a D-.
He was.
He was? Oh, that's bull crap. There's no way.
Another one is all that,
Oh,
defined as superior and cool. That guy in the Porsche thinks he's all that.
well, he is all that. He's got a Porsche. He's
I'd
also
that one.
Is also fat as well, man. So here, let's talk about this for a minute. So I'm surprised the bomb wasn't on there because I feel like that was one too from around that time period that was pretty.
That was
big.
in the September issue.
Yeah, right.
Of Indianapolis Monthly.
I do like, again, Indianapolis just doesn't feel like, it feels like the last place that would get Slang, but maybe not. Indianapolis may be a cool place. But okay, so fat, that has disappeared. That was one that was there for a very specific time, and then it was like immediately nobody has said that in years. Whereas all that's kind of a good one. I like that. That's one that doesn't really get used anymore, but I'm not as mad about that one as the other ones. But, well, that was a fun little trip back to high school.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I believe based on my research, it's not confirmed that it originated with Martin Lawrence's show, and that might have started it, but something else got it into the lexicon. This came from other resources, came up a few times, of how it really got into the daily lexicon.
Chief Keef?
I wish. Kind of. Maybe the forerunner to Chief Keef. An actress by the name of Fran Drescher.
No. Oh, yes. You're right.
So
she was working at a bridal shop in Flushing, Queens. Yes. Let's just say somebody that I was very close to for a long time. Loved that show and watched it a lot.
You might know her from The Nanny and from that voice that she has. But there's a movie she was in, a romantic comedy from 1997 called The Beautician and the Beast.
Yes,
that
I'm aware
the
of that.
movie's catchphrase was apparently "talk to the hand." So
I can't say I've ever seen that movie. And I kind of find it, I would say that I find it hard to believe that was the thing that spread, but people did love some Fran Drescher. I think The Nanny had like 12 seasons or something. So,
and actually we see a lot with other kind of pop idioms that they'll start with some cool culture, start with black subculture a whole lot.
Yep.
And then get co-opted by maybe the whitest. I'd say she's up there with like me and Pat Boone as like the whitest people that have ever lived. Fran Drescher, and I could see that, that would make sense to me. That they would get into everyone.
I vaguely remember that movie. Who was the lead male in that movie?
Timothy Dalton.
Ah, okay. The real 007.
The real James Bond.
Yeah.
It was also in Flash Gordon. He's pretty good in that. That's a good movie.
He had a good butt chin, right? And he had like
I would say that. Yeah. He's got a butt chin. He has some sort of weird chin. We'll have to explore that maybe for a future episode.
Butt chin in a new episode, feature episode. But
the origin of the butt chin.
Man, Talk to the Hand, though, I will say I don't like it either. It's terrible, terrible. And because there's no way to, I immediately don't like you. If you're actually going to use that, you're a person I probably won't get along with, right? So it's horrible.
And I don't even think it can be used as a joke. Like, you can't say that to be sarcastic. And I would like to conclude with a quote from Phrase Finder. In their piece on this, they conclude with a quote from the Syracuse Herald Journal. And the quote is, "I don't know about you, but if I hear someone say 'talk to the hand' again, I will strangle them with their own shoelaces."
Wait a minute. That person writing the article was you.
It was me. It was about my bathroom.
Well, I think that's a good way to end this one, unless you have anything else, because I think we all can relate to that one.
Yeah.
It's not fat at all. All right. Well, before we get to your last one, we're going to go ahead and do, and it's been a while since I've done it, but we're going to do new slang. All right. So today's new slang is troll or internet troll. Yeah.
Internet troll.
Trolling. So we'll talk about the difference between trolling and a troll. And I think I told you before this episode that this last night I was rewatching, or not rewatching, I was watching the latest episode of a show that you and I both enjoy, What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes.
And you did see that one, right?
Yes, I did.
So in the episode, Colin Robinson, who is a psychic vampire, is, he feeds off of people, basically sucking the energy out of people. So when he can't be face to face with someone, if he has enough internet devices or laptops, he goes on and he comments in social media or whatever to get under people's skin, and he can feed off of that. So obviously he's trolling, what we would say. And then at the end of the episode, or later in the episode, he meets his rival who's essentially trolling him, and it turns out to be an actual troll.
You've been annoying me, Colin Robinson.
Yeah, well, you've been trolling me.
Excuse me, I'm a troll? I do not like the term trolling.
Well, it's not really up for you to decide. I mean, that's current slang.
Well, I think it is because I'm a troll. It's an offensive term.
Well, that's what it means, so...
That's not what it means.
It does mean that. If you need me to look it up in Webster's and show you, I will. You're basically just a big...
Don't say it. My being a troll is not related to my online trolling.
I'm sorry that people use the term trolling.
Don't use the word.
But when you're a troll and you troll, then you're trolling.
So if you see the show, if you watch the show, that it has zombies and obviously vampires and things, but there's a real actual troll. So I thought, hey, perfect. Trolling, or to troll, or a troll, that term has been around for, it's not brand new. Mm-hmm. I think it's become more popular. So Steve, I mean, before I talk about where it came from, what is your relationship with the word troll or troll?
Well, as someone who does a lot of the Species network social media, I'm unfortunately very familiar with lots of internet trolls, just having to spend time on Twitter, where it seems they all congregate together and suck the life out of me. So, I think it was something that was more prominent in the early years of the internet and comment sections. Mm-hmm. And is one of the reasons now that most newspapers and I think YouTube has started getting rid of a lot of comment sections, and reasons like when we post anything online, I generally will not allow comment sections because there's just people that go out there just looking just to pick fights, or just the lowest, I don't know, it's the lowest common denominator of humanity. And there's just something that I guess the mask of the internet that puts you on, that you can hide yourself. Yeah. It allows people to do. It's one of the reasons, like, my personal Twitter account is my actual full name, because I use that for myself to make sure that anything I was going to write down, I wanted to be confident that I was fine to have my name out there associated with it.
That's actually a really good idea. Yeah. And I think that there are places where it's gotten better, mm-hmm. to where it's harder to be anonymous, but yeah. I'm actually curious about your take on this. Before we get into the, like, where it came from, is the idea of like the benevolent troller, or like somebody that is entertaining, like they're trolling the trolls almost. I found this article about I guess I don't know if it's I think it's supposed to be a female with an account called Cartoons Hate Her. Mm-hmm. And she's a viral star for, quote, good trolling. Mm-hmm. And I kind of read the article. I'm not a fan. So I kind of, as I got into this, I was just like, I just felt gross. I'm like, I want to, and maybe this is my age, I don't know what it is. It just, I don't want to live in a world where trolls are trolling other trolls and we all got to figure out who's being real and is this okay, that's hilarious. You got them. What's happening right now? Yeah. Like, I just don't like any of it.
What have you gained out of all of this?
Yeah. So it sounds like you agree with me. It's not, I mean, I understand, like, one thing I do like, and I guess because I feel like this is a force for good, which is the people that will do things to sort of ruin the day of a scammer, right? So, mm-hmm. like, I do enjoy, there's videos where there are scammers, whether they be from other countries or whatever, that are trying to like, scam you for your personal information. And then they do something to like waste all their time. I do like that stuff, but maybe that's the only exception, because otherwise it's just like, so, okay. Troll.
Troll.
So it's become such a broad term now that you say troll, it pretty much just means somebody who's being annoying on the internet. But to your point, it started out in the early days of the internet. And it's two separate things. So right now, when we think about the word troll, someone is a troll as a noun. I just kind of assumed that it had to do with like the Scandinavian folklore of a troll, a bridge troll. But I couldn't figure out, well, why would we call them a troll? What does it have to do with taking a toll, etc.? Well, it turns out nothing. It has nothing to do with the Scandinavian trolls. It really just is because it sounds like trolling, which is a type of phishing. So early in, I guess, Usenet groups and message boards, before all the social media, it was a little more lighthearted. It was, we talked about noob and newbie. So it goes back to that whole world where you sort of wanted to not roast, that wasn't really the term that was used that much, but sort of like you wanted to fish out for the noobs, right? So you'd write some comment, or you'd say something that anyone that's part of this group and has been part of this group already has discussed a bunch of times. But I'm going to put this little statement out there that's sort of going to get the newbie to respond to it. And then we can all kind of have a laugh and whatever. So it wasn't meant in like a hateful way. So the fishing, the technique, like I am not a fisherman, but apparently trolling is when you drag your lure across the bottom of the the lake or whatever. Again, not a fisher, but it's a way to get fish. There's also something called trawling, which is TRAWLING, which is a different technique. And it's so trolling was that action that would happen, and over time somebody say, yeah, I'm trolling. That turned into that person is a troll. And so it's kind of has nothing to do with the trolls as we think about them. So with that being said, that is sort of the background for how we got to troll. If you Google, I don't want to go into, people have written books on trolling. So this is supposed to be a short segment. I've probably already gone on too far, but I will just tell you, I don't mind the term. I would say, as far as slang, I guess I'd give it a thumbs up, just because it's something that we can easily identify. When you say it, everyone knows what it means. It has a negative connotation. And even though it didn't come from a big, ugly troll, like we saw in What We Do in the Shadows, it does. There's a reason why we think about that, because people that are trolling now, the way we think about it, are ugly. And so I will say, I do like it. I don't like people that do it, but the term itself has a place. What's your take on it?
I'd concur with you. I give it a thumbs up because it defines. I'm just sad that we actually have to have a term for this, but I think it accurately describes those sort of people that are out there, wasting their time on the internet, where they could be doing more productive things, like helping me find Martin Lawrence saying "talk to the hand" on his show, dressed up like Shanae. But
that is way more productive than trolling. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and finish this up and move on. That was this week's new slang. All right, Steve. So we got one more tonight.
Yep. So as I had mentioned at the beginning, my initial plan was to do an all face one. Our first one was to cut your nose to spite your face. Our second one was talk to the hand because the face don't want to hear you. And now that's allowed us to transition to a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. This is one I don't think I use too often, but I like it for a couple reasons. One, I think it gives a good idea of, it's better to count on what you have and, not lose yourself for what might be out there. Basically I think I generally will use don't count your chickens before they're hatched. I think that gives the the same thing. But this one's better because it sounds a little bit dirty. So I like that too.
Well, I'm trying to figure out why I didn't do this one with beat around the bush.
Yeah.
I should have, but yeah, why have we not done this one? It's good.
It wasn't meant to be. But
it's a classic idiom, and it's a good one because it's something that I would use. It's a good concept when it comes to like financial principles as well. I mean,
exactly.
so yeah. And you
avoiding
say
risk. And you get to say bush.
Yes.
Which is a lot of fun. So going to our friends at Phrase Finder. Again, this is a proverb that I think is just, it makes, you could see that this and analogous ones would be around for a long time. So they define it as an allusion, potentially to falconry. You'd have a bird in the hand, your falcon, which is probably worth more than your prey. The two things in the bush, maybe the falcon would be going after.
Okay.
And related to that, it goes back to actually a book that we referred to a few weeks ago when we discussed Tie the Knot, the life of St. Catherine of Alexandria.
Oh, yeah.
In 1450. So she's back. And the quote is, "It's more certain a bird in your fest than to haul three in the sky aboo." So
true.
Saw that why that didn't stick around. But someone else did a little bit better. And from the year 1546, someone else wrote, "Better one bird in hand than 10 in the wood." I kind of like that one too. That's because that's a little bit naughty. And you're thinking, man, that's a catchy phrase. I wonder who could have done that in 1546. I'll tell you who. John, Haywood.
Oh, you brought it back. Okay, so the connection is there. I like it.
I've redeemed us after we've gone to Fran Drescher and Martin Lawrence. So
I have a little bit of whiplash, man, from this episode.
Yeah. We're going everywhere. So just in conclusion of this, as we've talked about, there could be different versions that are a little bit better, and it's tough not to go out looking at a version of this that's related to the Bible. So this actually comes from an article from Psychology Today, asking, "Is a bird in the hand worth two in the bush?" And their brief summary is, "A bird in the hand is worth more than two in the bush if you don't kill it," which I guess kind of goes there with, cutting a nose off your face.
Oh, okay.
Make you ugly. But okay. I like the quote they have here from Ecclesiastes 9:4. "A living dog is better than a dead lion."
I like that one.
And that's pretty good. I mean, it's not as naughty sounding as "a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush," but
no. Well, to be frank, I really like the "a bird in the hand is worth 10 in the wood."
Yeah,
I like
John
that.
Haywood. Yeah. So before we close out here, I did want to read a couple other versions of this from some different languages.
Oh, good.
So
please.
There's a Czech version of this. "A sparrow in the fist is better than a pigeon on the roof."
Okay. I like that they have the fist in there.
Yeah. And you would think that that would be related to the next language we're going to do, German, which is, "The sparrow in the hand is better than the dove on the roof," which is maybe the least German thing. That sounds like that would be a trick. Like someone would be trolling you like with that.
Right.
Like that they're trying to set you up for something.
Right.
Yeah. But I think, coming back and looking at these that we do, it's important. What I've learned from this is spite isn't a good value to have. You don't want to be spiteful. You don't want to cut your nose to spite your face. You don't want to spend too much time to prove somebody wrong by looking at Martin Lawrence videos on YouTube.
Right.
And if you disagree with me on that, I got something you can talk to, because the face don't want to see.
Hey, this is Scott. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Origin of Species. We only have one episode left for season 3, which has been a great season. We really appreciate all of your support, all our new subscribers, and those of you that have been here from the beginning. We have a great final episode planned for you, so make sure you don't miss that. Also, Personal Records is coming back for season 2, and that will be on June 25th. So if you haven't already subscribed to Personal Records, you can go to speaksies.com/personal records and subscribe at your podcast provider of choice. I have links there. Anyway, once again, thank you for listening to Origin of Speaksies.
I got an A.
Oh,
Fat.